Hello and welcome to the Graceful Revolution. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Bird. I am super excited to be here with you today. Yay! For another episode of the Graceful Revolution. I'm really excited to talk to you about the topic of dominion today. I've been thinking a lot about the idea of dominion ever since I went to a presentation put on by an Indigenous woman here in Corvallis, and it was about plant medicine and Indigenous practices. And one of the things that she talked about was the word dominion and how that word appears in Genesis, the book of Genesis, in the Bible. And for those of you that don't know, I am also a lay preacher in the Episcopal Church. And the idea of dominion is something that it is presented in the book of Genesis as dominion over the earth. So dominion over plants and animals and people. And this idea that this wrathful God has told us that we are here to have dominion over the earth. And I'm presenting this here to you today as total crap. Because we are not here to have dominion over the earth. We are here to work in concert with the earth. We are naturally occurring beings on the planet. We are woven of the earth. We are part of this planet. We are part of the natural way of being. It is not a natural order, because when we put things in order, we start to categorize things in a way that is not in synchronicity or harmony with the planet. We are meant to be one with the planet. And this idea of dominion, I think, is really important as a construct for the Graceful Revolution, because the idea of dominance carries through the thread of our society. And it is a narrative that we've got to cut the cord to. And this is really important for us to understand, because the idea of dominion means we have power over people, power over the land, power over the rivers and the streams and the oceans, power over the animals. And when we think of things in this form of dominance, in this narrative of dominance, it is why we are able to engage in continuing a culture of slavery and imprisonment and ownership over land and things. And this is not the way God intended us to be. And that sneaky word dominion is a word that has been put into the zeitgeist of our language so that we can justify removing Native people. It is to justify extraction of minerals and oil and plants and animals. It is the foundation of colonization. And it continues to this day. In the year of our Lord 2025, it continues to this day. This idea of dominance and dominion continues to be this rattling, nefarious way of thinking that it bleeds into almost every single thing that we engage with on this planet. And the reason I'm bringing it to our attention, and the reason I'm talking about it in the context of the Graceful Revolution, is because I believe that we are going to continue to think that these structures are normal, that they have always existed, that they have been here forever. And it is that structure of dominance and dominion that actually was created by the continual writings and rewritings of the Bible. So I know, I know that this seems like, particularly for people that are not Christian and do not read the Bible, this seems like, well, that's just pertaining to them or to us, right? To me as a Christian person, when actually that is not the case. So if we go back before the Bible was written, we see a long history of over tens of thousands of years of connection with the planet, connection with each other, connection with earth, air, water, and fire. This connection that we are stewards of the land, that we are here to live in harmony with the planet, that we are not meant to have dominion over people, places, or things. And I am writing my book, The Art of the Graceful Revolution. And one of the things I actually talk about is I talk about Eve, and I talk about the Garden of Eden, because this is where it all begins. And there is actually a line in Genesis that says, "You will not certainly die, for God knows that when you eat from it, the apple, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." And I think we've been sold a bill of goods. I think that if we really look at this idea of good and evil, right versus wrong, we end up becoming polarized in this either or narrative that is not the truth. The truth is that our lives are complicated and nuanced, and that when we get ourselves out of this either or binary thinking and we end up living in the both and world, we start to recognize that we are not here to have dominance over the bees and the birds and the flowers. We are here to enjoy and cultivate relationship with all living things. And it is in cultivating that relationship that we become closer to the divine. And that in and of itself is a revolutionary idea, because what happens is that when we acknowledge that dominion is bullshit, then we are able to see the very threads of action that have caused us to believe that we are meant to own, control, and dominate people, places, and things. That is not true. We are being invited right now to get back to the idea of our very ancient ancestors. It doesn't matter where we come from originally. What matters is that we connect to the message that those ancestors are bringing forward for us. And the message that our ancestors are bringing forward for us is a message of reciprocity. It is a message of connection. It is a message of harmony. I have been thinking for about almost a year about this idea of the ocean. In the ocean, the waves in the ocean come in sets of 7. And those waves are pulled in harmony by the tug and the harmony of the moon. Whether it's daylight or nighttime, the moon is causing the ocean to do its thing. And it is that reciprocal, harmonious connective relationship between the moon and the tides that creates our coastlines, that creates our waters, that creates the movement and the flow of the ocean so that the largest animals on the planet can swim and sing and connect and eat. I'm talking about the whales. That there is this reciprocal relationship being modeled for us when we allow ourselves to release the idea of dominion and start to connect to the idea of reciprocity. One of the things that I foundationally hope you understand is that if we are buying into the notion of dominance, then we are buying into the notion that there also has to be submission. And I recognize how pervasive this idea has become, because it is foundational to the politics, particularly of the United States, but many democracies are founded on this notion of the us versus them, who are the chosen and who are not. And that is not living in harmony and concert with our shared humanity and our humanness. And so I want to really invite you to explore the places in which the idea of dominion and dominance have filtered into your own beliefs. This has been a long unweaving for me. The idea of ownership of land, for example, is a pervasive idea that was only started in the United States because of colonization. It was about the westward expansion, the idea of manifest destiny, which was the platform used to go and move people off of the land that they had been living in harmony with for tens of thousands of years so that we could dominate and own property. Thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of property. And if you understand how that dominance thread, the idea of ownership, the American dream of owning a home, that idea of owning things has become so pervasive that now what we are witnessing as our democracy is blowing up, we are witnessing the questioning of this belief system that has been fed to us for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so I want us to think about unraveling this sweater. I want us to think of pulling the thread just ever so slightly, pulling the thread to unravel what we believe to be true about our existence here on this planet. And in that unraveling, what happens is that we are able to see the graceful openings that are presented to us as we unravel the thread more and more. It's like we're creating an opening for us to see clearly how the very structures of this country in the United States are built upon the premise and the idea that we are here to dominate others. And this othering has become part of the thing that we are wrestling with all the time. It is the thing that causes us to have this cognitive dissonance. We know that we are people. We know that we are humans. We know that we are naturally occurring things. And no matter what the tech bros say, and no matter what the dominant narrative is of this country, our cognitive dissonance as women of color, as people who are part of multiple communities, that's the cognitive dissonance that's ringing in our ears like a really bad case of tinnitus, right? The cognitive dissonance that we know when we see a bird flying, that there's something that pulls at us from our heart and shows us that there is a connection to that bird. The other day, I was outside in the morning and I could hear a bird crying for its mama. And it sounded so sad. And I looked up at our telephone pole, and there was a baby hawk, this very fluffy, fluffy baby hawk who was crying for its mother. And I felt anguish in my heart for that baby because it was trying to find its mama and it couldn't find its mother. And I felt that in my heart, that longing to be protected, to be held, to be nurtured, to be shown how to fly. And there was no moment where I thought, well, I have to save that bird and I have to fix that bird and I have to have dominion over that animal so that I can help it. I just saw that there was this thing occurring in my backyard. And that heart feeling of wanting so much to call out to my own mother to be nurtured and held and cared for became so prominent in my thoughts that I said a little prayer and I said, you know, I hope that you are able to find your way and connect to your mother. And then I ran upstairs to get a better view of the bird because why not? And it was gone by the time I got upstairs. And so I knew that that baby had flown away. And somehow I hope that it has connected to its mother. But this is the point. When white people came to the United States, when the Spanish started moving north, and when people from England and France came west, what they noticed was a very, very lush, abundant, beautiful nature where the bison roamed, where deer were plentiful, where there were fish. Like when they talk about the fish on the coast, you could literally walk on them because there were so many millions of them. And what happened was that they thought, oh, I can just take and take and take and take and take because there's so much of it. There's so much abundance here. The abundance of the planet is extraordinary here on this land. And what the disconnect was, the reason there was so much abundance is because the original caretakers of this land, the native indigenous people of this land, stewarded the land and worked in harmony with the earth. And even when they would hunt only for what they needed. They would take only what would sustain them. They were nomadic and they would move so that they never extracted too much from one place. And this idea of homesteading and farming came over, this monocrop farming where we only grow corn or we only grow rice or we only grow pumpkins. Like this idea of monocrop farming came and it extracted from the land. And so when we think about the art of the Graceful Revolution and we think about dominance and dominion, what we have to start acknowledging is that it is that extractive idea that does not serve us anymore as human beings. And so I just want to invite you to take this time to think about the idea of dominance and dominion and recognize that that is not actually what God wants, what the divine wants, what the universe wants. What the universe wants is for us to see the abundance of the earth and honor that abundance, to know that there will always be just enough for us as long as we are living in harmony and reciprocity with our own hearts and with the planet. And that's what I want to invite you to do. I want you to think about ways that you have believed the narrative of ownership, the narrative of this American dream. And I say that in quotes because the American dream is an illusion that was created to own people and dominate land. And I want to really invite you to think about how we can change this narrative gracefully, without anger, without vitriol, to think about how the revolutionary concept here is about allowing ourselves to honor our shared humanness, even when we don't agree politically, socially, religiously, economically. When we give ourselves over to the notion and the idea that we are here to be in concert with each other, to sing the songs of our hearts together, when we are meant to be open-handed and open-hearted so that we can see each other, see this planet, see the nature that is right in front of us. Even if we live in a city that doesn't have very many trees, the sky is still above us. The clouds are still creating shapes for us to imagine what they are. The sun still rises and sets. The moon still rises and sets. There is still something we can look to in nature that reminds us that we are here together, and that when we give grace to ourselves and to each other, what we are doing is engaging in the grace of the planet. So I hope that you will explore this idea of dominion, that you will disrupt this idea of dominion, that you will start to remember that your natural way of being is through connection and harmony and reciprocity. And that is Graceful Revolution, my friends. So let me know what you think about this idea of dominion, about how it has impacted your own life, about how you can think just a little bit differently about the connective weaving that brings us all together here on this planet. It's a beautiful reminder, and I really hope you'll play with this a little bit. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you want to learn more about the Graceful Revolution or any of the work that I'm doing, you can always visit me at my website at drmelissabird.com. And I would really love to hear from you about your thoughts about harmony and reciprocity in the planet. And I just really love you. Okay, bye.